show, and it looked like WNBA fans is pissed off over A'ja Wilson and her special whistle.
What if I told you that one of the most dominant athletes in professional basketball today is at the center of a controversy that threatens to overshadow her entire legacy? That despite 3 championships in 4 years and a record-breaking MVP season, conversations about her greatness are being drowned out by accusations of referee favoritism so widespread that fans have given a name, the A'ja whistle. This isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about fairness, perception, and whether the WNBA is protecting its chosen stars at the cost of its credibility.
5 fouls. Sabali can't.
Stick around, because what we've uncovered about A'ja Wilson's unprecedented treatment on the court will change how you view the game forever. And before we dive deeper, if you're passionate about sports justice and want more exposures that challenge the mainstream narrative, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what comes next. Let's be clear from the start. A'ja Wilson is undoubtedly one of the most talented basketball players ever to grace the WNBA. Her accolades speak for themselves. In the 2025 season alone, she achieved what no player in WNBA or NBA history has ever accomplished, winning the scoring title, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP all in the same season. With her 4th MVP award, she now stands alone as the most decorated player in league history, surpassing legends like Sheryl Swoopes, Lisa Leslie, and Lauren Jackson. Her Las Vegas Aces just completed a dominant sweep of the Phoenix Mercury to secure their 3rd championship in 4 years, cementing their status as a modern dynasty. Wilson's coach, Becky Hammon, has described her using increasingly elevated metaphors, from a great white among mako sharks to being alone on Everest rather than merely on the Mount Rushmore of basketball greats.
Give the ball to A'ja and get out of the way. That's all the play was.
Yeah, I feel like in that moment, if a coach has to tell me what to do, I'm not doing my job. And she just drew up a play. It wasn't really even a play.
Sports Illustrated writer Michael Rosenberg boldly declared, A'ja Wilson is certifiably the GOAT. Even Wilson's teammates recognize her unparalleled impact. Chelsea Gray noted, "Tell me something she hasn't done." She's done it all, and done it at a high level. At just 29 years old, Wilson has reached a level of dominance that most players can only dream of, with what should be her prime years still ahead of her. This context is crucial to understanding the current controversy. The questions aren't about her talent or work ethic, but rather about whether the system around her has been manipulated to enhance her already stellar achievements.
That's what you saw, and I'm appreciative that Becky trusts me in those moments. But that's playoff basketball moments. Those are the moments that you live for. So I'm glad I was able to show up. I get on my guards for not coming to work, so I'm glad I...
Beneath the surface of this triumphant narrative, a very different story has been brewing, one that exploded into mainstream consciousness during the 2025 finals. Fans and analysts began noticing a disturbing pattern in how games were being officiated when Wilson was on the court. They observed that Wilson seemed to receive beneficial calls from referees in crucial moments, while opposing stars faced different standards. The phenomenon became so prevalent that fans dubbed it the A'ja whistle, a term that trended across social media platforms during the playoffs. The controversy reached its peak during the Aces Mercury Finals series, where statistical disparities raised eyebrows across the basketball world. In one critical game, Wilson shot an astonishing 12 free throws, while Phoenix Mercury star Sabali, who faced similar defensive attention, got hacked like a tree and barely saw the line.
We have to talk about is the amount of free throws A'ja Wilson is getting off. Not only just the amount of free throws she's getting off, the free throws and the calls that is pretty much garnering her the type of performances like this. She never gets in foul trouble. She gets all her calls. At this point, bro, this is unprecedented. I feel as if Caitlin Clark needs this damn whistle. Everybody should be pitching a bitch about A'ja Wilson whistle, because the WNBA was so far in the sunken damn place, no one paid attention to the sport. No one ever watched the first 2 damn champions.
As one critic observed. Even more telling, Wilson consistently managed to avoid foul trouble herself, rarely accumulating personal fouls despite playing aggressive defense. Meanwhile, opponents like Sabali found themselves limited by foul trouble, unable to play with the same freedom and aggression. Social media became flooded with side-by-side video comparisons, showing nearly identical plays, where Wilson would draw a foul on one end, while similar contact against her when uncalled on the defensive end. One particularly viral clip showed Wilson setting what appeared to be an obvious moving screen, a play that announcers immediately identified as a foul, only for the whistle to blow against the defender instead. Other clips showed Wilson crashing into defenders during rebounding attempts, resulting in jump ball calls rather than offensive fouls. These visual evidences spread like wildfire, with fans, analysts, and even former players questioning whether there was a double standard in officiating for the Aces superstar.
Mainstream media, and now people is paying attention. Not only is we paying attention, we're noticing a pattern, and the pattern is A'ja Wilson get this damn special whistle. Like, this should be looked into, bro.
What makes the A'ja Wilson whistle controversy particularly compelling is that it's not an isolated complaint. The WNBA has been facing growing criticism about it officiating from multiple fronts, including some of its biggest stars. The timing of this controversy is especially sensitive, coming just as the league's collective bargaining agreement is set to expire at the end of the month, further complicating an already tense relationship between the players' union and league leadership. Perhaps the most powerful indictment came from Minnesota Lynx star Napheesa Collier, who didn't mince words in her season-ending exit interview. She blasted the league's leadership, stating, "Right now, we have the worst leadership in the world." Collier specifically targeted the perceived inconsistent officiating that has plagued the league, noting that fans see it every night. Coaches, both winning and losing, point out every night in pre-game and post-game media. Yet leadership just issues fines and looks the other way. Her frustration echoed the sentiments of many players and fans who believe the league has been ignoring glaring issues with how games are called. The situation became so severe that WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert was forced to address the criticisms head-on during a press conference before Game 1 of the finals. She acknowledged the growing discontent, stating, "I was disheartened to hear that some players feel the league, and me personally, do not care about them or listen to them." Engelbert promised changes, announcing that the league would establish a new task force with players and other stakeholders' involvement to help WNBA officiating evolve in step with the growth of the league. But for many critics, this response felt like too little, too late. A temporary solution proposed only after the controversy had already boiled over into public view. The A'ja Wilson officiating controversy gains even more traction when contrasted with the treatment of another WNBA superstar, Caitlin Clark. The Indiana Fever rookie phenomenon, who has brought millions of new fans to the league, appears to receive strikingly different treatment from officials despite being one of the most heavily guarded players in the league. While Wilson averages a league-leading 8.3 free throw attempts per game, Clark's numbers tell a very different story. She averages less than half of Wilson's free throw attempts despite driving to the basket with similar frequency and taking significant contact. The disparity became impossible to ignore during a regular season matchup between the Aces and Fever. In one telling sequence, Clark drove aggressively to the basket and appeared to be hit hard by defenders. No whistle blew. On the very next possession, Wilson received what many described as minimal contact from a defender and immediately went to the free throw line. The Fever bench reacted with visible frustration, a moment captured by broadcast cameras and widely shared on social media. This pattern has repeated itself so frequently that Clark has developed a characteristic response. When she gets hit with no call, she often looks at the referees and simply laughs in disbelief, a reaction that has become emblematic of the different standards players seem to face. Clark herself addressed the need for better league leadership at her exit interview, stating, "I have great respect for Napheesa Collier, and I think she made a lot of very valid points. This is straight up the most important moment in this league's history. We have a responsibility to make sure that this game is in a great place going forward with the CBA and caring for our players." Even Clark's teammate, Sophie Cunningham, was more blunt in her assessment, claiming that there are a lot of people in the position of power in the WNBA. They don't know *T about basketball, and that's got to change. These comments from within the league lend credibility to what fans have been observing all season. The inconsistent officiating isn't just in their imagination, it's a real problem affecting the game's integrity. The natural question becomes, why would league officials potentially favor A'ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces? When you peel back the layers, the answer, many speculate, lies not in a shadowy conspiracy, but in the cold, hard calculus of the business of growing women's basketball. We're talking about a league experiencing unprecedented growth, record-breaking ticket sales, and soaring TV ratings. In this high-stakes environment, certain narratives are simply better for business than others. the Aces have meticulously positioned themselves as the WNBA's premier dynasty. Think about it. A team backed by deep-pocketed Vegas ownership, playing a glamorous market, packed with marketable stars like Kelsey Plum and Chelsea Gray, and led by the charismatic Aya Wilson. They play a fast, exciting, and dominant brand of basketball that draws casual viewers. In many ways, they become the polished, professional face of the modern WNBA. And from a business standpoint, dynasties are a powerful marketing tool. They create household names, generate must-see TV events, and give the league a stable, recognizable product to sell to sponsors and broadcast partners. A third title in 4 years isn't just another championship. It's a solidification of a legacy that the league can promote for years to come. There's a vested interest in seeing that narrative of excellence continue uninterrupted. But this isn't a new playbook. There's overwhelming precedent for this kind of star treatment across the entire landscape of professional sports. For decades, the NBA has faced identical accusations about protecting its marquee players. In the 1990s, critics often claimed Michael Jordan received beneficial calls on his drives to the basket, with defenders seemingly penalized for breathing too heavily on the league's global icon. In more recent eras, the same conversation has followed legends like LeBron James and even Steph Curry, with fans and analysts alike pointing to moments where superstar status seemed to influence the whistle. Look at the NFL, an organization notorious for implementing rules that specifically protect its most valuable assets, the quarterbacks. Roughing the passer calls, defenseless receiver rules, and the constant emphasis on player safety all conveniently serve to keep the stars on the field and the high-powered offenses humming. If the WNBA is consciously or subconsciously following this established pattern, it makes a cynical kind of business sense. Dynasties draw casual fans. Legendary players become crossover stars. Championship repeats generate headlines that break through the noise of the crowded sports landscape. The Aces success story is a tidy, compelling package that benefits the entire league's commercial ecosystem. However, this calculated approach comes with monumental risks that the league may have gravely underestimated. The historic influx of new fans drawn by Caitlin Clark and her remarkable rookie class represents a pivotal moment, a once-in-a-generation chance to secure a broader audience and achieve financial heights previously thought impossible. But there's a crucial distinction with this new wave of fans. Many of them are not yet deeply invested in the traditional WNBA narratives or legacy franchises. They arrive with fresh eyes, and what they value most is authentic, unpredictable competition. They are digital natives, raised on highlight clips and instant analysis, and they are hypersensitive to perceptions of unfairness or manipulation. If this massive new audience becomes convinced that game outcomes are subtly predetermined or that certain players operate under a different set of rules, they may disengage just as quickly as they arrived. The league finds itself walking a perilous tightrope, trying to leverage its established stars and dynasties while simultaneously maintaining credibility with an expanding fan base that values competitive integrity above all else. The situation becomes even more complex when you consider the internal dynamics of the league itself. The WNBA is a relatively small ecosystem with a limited number of teams and players. In such an environment, narratives can be powerful tools for driving engagement, a rivalry, a villain, a dynasty to be toppled. These storylines fuel conversation and viewership. But what happens when the narrative begins to feel forced? When a villain isn't just a talented opponent, but a player perceived as being artificially elevated by the system itself? This creates a dangerous backlash. Instead of celebrating Aya Wilson's undeniable greatness, the conversation gets hijacked by accusations and skepticism. The very star the league might want to promote becomes a symbol of inequity, and her achievements are viewed with a side of suspicion. This doesn't just hurt Wilson's legacy, it poisons a well for everyone. Furthermore, we have to confront the uncomfortable question of what this alleged protection says to the other players. Imagine being a veteran like Diana Taurasi or Breanna Stewart, players who built the league through years of grind, now watching a new standard of officiating applied to a rival. Or consider perspective of the role players, the ones who don't have MVP accolades, fighting for every minute and every contract. If they believe the game is not being called evenly, it can breed resentment and disillusionment, fracturing the very sense of unity the league needs to thrive. Nafisa Collier's fiery comments were not made in a vacuum. They were an eruption of pent-up frustration from a leader who feels the system is broken. The league's response, or lack thereof, speaks volumes. When Commissioner Kathy Engelbert announces a task force only after the controversy has already exploded, it can feel reactive rather than proactive. It fuels the perception that the league is merely managing a public relations crisis rather than genuinely addressing a core issue of competitive integrity. The silence from the officiating crews themselves, bound by lead policy not to publicly comment on specific calls, creates an information vacuum that gets filled instantly by fan analysis and speculation, often to the detriment of the league's preferred narrative. In the end, the gamble is immense. By potentially favoring a dynasty, the WNBA might be securing short-term gains in storytelling and marketability, but it does so at the risk of undermining the long-term foundation of any sports league, the belief that the games are decided by the players on the court, not by the biases of the officials off it. The new fans tuning in, the ones the league desperately needs to retain, are the first to sense when something smells off. They can tell the difference between a script and a sport. If the WNBA wants to transition from a niche league to a mainstream powerhouse, it must choose. Does it want to be known for crafting perfect narratives, or for delivering pure, unscripted, and authentically competitive basketball? The answer to that question will determine its future far more than any single championship. The central, inescapable problem with the Iowa whistle controversy is a truth that resonates across all sports. Perception, left unchecked, hardens into reality. This isn't just about basketball, it's about human psychology. When a critical mass of fans, analysts, and even fellow players begin to believe a narrative, regardless of its absolute truth, that narrative begins to shape the story, redefine legacies, and ultimately rewrite history. The statistics, the nuanced rules of the game, the legitimate explanations for individual calls, all of it can be rendered meaningless in a court of public opinion. For the WNBA, a league riding a wave of unprecedented popularity, this credibility crisis represents a dangerous undercurrent that could pull the entire foundation out from under its success. Let's break down how this perception takes root and spreads. In the digital age, controversy doesn't just simmer, it explodes. A questionable no-call in the third quarter of a Tuesday night game isn't forgotten by the next morning. It's immediately clipped, isolated, and stripped of context. It's placed side by side with nearly identical play from a different game where a whistle was blown, often involving a player like Caitlin Clark. These comparison videos are devastatingly effective. They don't require deep basketball knowledge to understand. The visual dissonance is argument enough. Algorithms on platforms like X, TikTok, and Instagram then push this content to millions, creating an echo chamber where the Iowa whistle is not a theory, but a proven fact. The conversation shifts from "did this happen?" to "how can a league allow this to keep happening?" This phenomenon was perfectly illustrated after Wilson's dramatic game-winning shot in the finals. The WNBA's official social media accounts, doing their job to promote their stars, posted highlight reels praising what they called an unreal clutch performance. But the comment sections told a completely different story. They became a digital battleground, flooded with thousands of comments sharply divided between those celebrating the shot and those weaponized in the moment to question the entire game's officiating. The celebratory post was no longer about the shot. It became the catalyst for the controversy. Terms like Ref Wilson, the Whistle Queen, and Vegas Scripted began trending alongside the highlights, permanently tethering Wilson's greatest moment to the skepticism surrounding it. Even neutral sports pages, which typically stick to game analysis, found themselves forced to address the elephant in the room, asking aloud whether the league was protecting its chosen stars. When neutral observers feel compelled to question the integrity of the competition, the league has a 5-alarm fire on its hands. This places Iowa Wilson in an almost impossible position, one that few athletes of her caliber have had to navigate. How does a player who has dedicated her life to mastering her craft respond to accusations that her success is somehow artificially manufactured? Her accomplishments, the MVPs, the Defensive Player of the Year awards, the championships, are the result of tangible, extraordinary skill and work ethic. Yet, she now has to defend her legacy against an intangible, shadowy enemy, the power of perception. In her post-game interviews, we've seen her attempt to smile through the tension, offering variations of, "I just play my game," and "I don't control the refs." These are textbook, professional responses. But in the eyes of a skeptical public, they can come across as dismissive or worse, an admission by silence. The critics pounce, knowing that saying nothing can sometimes scream guilt louder than a poorly chosen word. This creates a vicious cycle. The more she succeeds, the louder the accusations become, and the more defensive she has to be, which in turn makes her seem less relatable. It's a narrative trap that threatens to overshadow her genuine, historic greatness. The collateral damage of this crisis extends far beyond Wilson herself. It creates a toxic environment for the entire league. For the Las Vegas Aces, their well-earned dynasty is now shadowed by a giant, unofficial asterisk. Every victory is met with a chorus of they had helped, cheapening the experience for their legitimate fans and diminishing the value of their hard-won rings. For rivals like the Indiana Fever, it creates a sense of futility. When players believe they are not competing on a level playing field, it can be psychologically devastating. We saw glimpses of this on the Fever bench, the resigned laughs, the looks of disbelief, which only fuel the narrative further. It makes their victories over the Aces feel like monumental upsets against impossible odds, and their losses feel like predetermined outcomes. This erosion of trust is the single greatest threat to the WNBA's future. Sports are ultimately a form of entertainment built on a foundation of authenticity. Fans invest their time, money, and emotions because they believe in the genuine nature of the competition. They need to believe that the effort on the court is real, that the outcomes are uncertain, and that the rules apply equally to everyone. The moment that belief is shattered, the entire illusion collapses. Why would a new fan drawn in by Caitlin Clark's electrifying play continue to invest if they become convinced the game is rigged? Why would a casual viewer stick around for a season they believe has a pre-written ending? The league's handling of this crisis will be its ultimate test. Ignoring it, hoping it will fade away, is not a strategy, it's surrender. The perception of unfairness is a weed that, if left unattended, will choke out the beautiful garden the WNBA has worked so hard to grow. To regain trust, the league must embrace radical transparency. This goes beyond forming a task force. It means openly addressing the specific comparisons fans are making. It means educating viewers on the officiating guidelines in a clear, accessible way. It means demonstrating, through action and communication, that the integrity of the game is more important than the success of any single player or franchise. The WNBA has a golden opportunity to lead here, to show the sports world how to navigate a modern credibility crisis. But it must act quickly, because in the battle between perception and reality, there are no timeouts. As the WNBA moves forward following the Aces championship victory, the league faces a pivotal moment in its history. The officiating controversy surrounding Aya Wilson represent more than just isolated complaints. They reflect broader concerns about consistency and transparency in how the game is managed, with collective bargaining negotiations looming and player frustration at a boiling point. The league's leadership faces mounting pressure to address these issues head-on before they permanently damage the sport's credibility. The fundamental question remains: is Aya Wilson receiving special treatment from officials, or is she simply a supremely talented player who has mastered drawing contact within the rules? The answer likely lies somewhere in between. Wilson's combination of size, athleticism, and skill naturally puts defenders at a disadvantage, forcing them into foul situations. At the same time, the statistical disparities in free throw attempts and the visual evidence of inconsistent calls suggests that something more complex may be occurring. What's undeniable is that the appearance of impropriety can be as damaging as actual bias, and right now, that appearance is shaping how many fans view the game. The WNBA stands at a crossroads. It can continue to promote its established stars and dynasties at the risk of alienating new fans, or it can embrace complete transparency and consistency to ensure a level playing field for all teams and players. The decision it makes will determine whether this era becomes remembered as a golden age of women's basketball or a missed opportunity undermined by questions of fairness. As for Aya Wilson, her legacy will ultimately be written by how she responds to these challenges, whether she can rise above the controversy and cement her status through undeniable excellence that leaves no room for doubts or questions. What do you think about the Aya Wilson officiating controversy? Is there legitimate cause for concern, or is this simply a case of fans struggling to appreciate true greatness? Sound off in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you found this deep dive into one of basketball's most heated debates enlightening, do us a favor and hit that like button. Share this video with your basketball-loving friends. And subscribe to the channel for more content that goes beyond the headlines and exposes the untold stories in sports.